Hey guys, welcome back to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. I'm going to take off my glasses so you don't see the big glare. Here's baby Elisha. And today I'm going to tell my pregnancy and labor and delivery stories about this little guy. Right? So Elisha is 17 days old today. And I did a video while I was in labor. We did some different clips of while I was in labor. So you can go watch those if you want to. But I was just going to talk through how things went, how pregnancy went, and everything like that. I'm adjusting the camera. Mark is outside with the kids. So if you hear people come in to use the bathroom and stuff, that's the noise. Hi, sweetie. Okay. So, to start this video out, my pregnancy with Elisha started back 9.5 months ago. And we announced it to the children by telling them that, so Gideon is our 2.5-year-old. And I had realized that the night before we were going to tell them, that Gideon had been able to start pointing out different people in the family. So we had taken our test. We tell the kids very early when we're pregnant because we've experienced some losses and we want the kids to be able to rejoice with us while we're rejoicing and then mourn with us while we mourn. And so as soon as we know we're pregnant, we tell them, like the day after I get the test, a positive test. There's only been one time that we waited a little longer, and I took a test on a whim, even though I was bleeding. I thought I was having my cycle, but I was still like really nauseous. So I took the test and we waited, I think 2 days to tell them because I was waiting for the HCG draw because I wasn't sure what was going on. But other than that, we've told them as soon as I got a positive test. So we told the kids by having everyone in the living room, we were going to do our normal Bible time. And I said, hey guys, guess what Gideon can do? Hey Gideon, can you go point out Naomi? Can you go point out Samuel? And then I asked him to point out the new baby, and they all figured out what was going on. And so after we told the kids here in the household, we called Virginia, who's our older daughter, who's married and lives in Tennessee. And I wanted to tell Virginia because she, is part of our family, and I wanted her to know before I just posted it on Facebook. Hi, baby. But they had gotten married in May, and the weekend of the wedding, I actually had a miscarriage. And then they got married and got pregnant shortly thereafter, and they had a miscarriage. So we had both just recently experienced miscarriages. And so I wanted to tell her, but I also knew it might be hard for her to hear. Not that she wouldn't be happy for us, but just it's hard after you've lost a baby to hear pregnancy announcements sometimes. So we called them, and Virginia was actually very, very excited and was saying, I'm so happy because that means we have a possibility of being pregnant together again. We had both been excited at the thought of we were pregnant right around the time they got married, and that could mean we'd have babies close together. So the fact though that I'm older, I'm 41, we aren't sure how many more babies we're going to have. So after we had that loss, we weren't sure that we'd have another baby. You never know when God is going to open or close the womb. So we called and told Virginia, and that was very exciting. And then the pregnancy went really well. I didn't know if I was having a boy or girl when we went to our 20-week ultrasound. With my first 6 pregnancies, my symptoms for boys and girls were very, very different. But my last 4 pregnancies, I've actually been very healthy during the entire pregnancy. And so my symptoms of the first couple pregnancies was either I felt sick all the time for my boys, and with my girls, I was throwing up regularly during the pregnancies. But these last pregnancies, I've had some nausea, but not like I can't get stuff done. So it's been very different the past 4 pregnancies. So as my body has gotten older, I've actually gotten better pregnancies. The only complications with this pregnancy was I was older, so they wanted me to do more tests. And I was borderline gestational diabetes, which I have been other pregnancies too. So I'm going to try to adjust the camera again so you can see this guy. I have been this was my 4th pregnancy to be borderline gestational diabetes. And I found that out because I started taking my blood sugars right about the time, like shortly after I got pregnant, because I knew that it had been a problem in the past. I do not do the glucola drink anymore during pregnancy because I would rather just test at home and know what my body's doing with the food that I actually eat on a regular basis, because I don't typically drink 50 grams of sugar at a time. Hey, baby, I know, you're just all moving around. And so the past couple pregnancies, I've had to just limit the amount of carbs or which carbs I eat. I can eat beans without much of a problem, but I can't eat rice. That spikes my blood sugar. So if you have gestational diabetes, you have to figure out what works for you. I found a lot of foods that did work, and we were able to, I was able to just control it all with diet and exercise. And if you want to see more about that, I have another video that talks about my gestational diabetes journey this pregnancy. But anyway, I was healthy during the pregnancy. We were able to travel for the month of October. So I was pregnant during that time that we went to Tennessee, fairly early pregnancy. And then we were home for the winter here in Maine, and I was able to do all my appointments here with the local midwives. How our hospital works is we have a group of 5 midwives that work at the hospital, and if you are a not high-risk pregnancy, the midwives will deliver most of the moms that deliver at this hospital, with doctors being backup. And so I was able to see one midwife for the entire pregnancy. I took a pregnancy class called Centering, where I met with 4 other women that were due around the same time I was, and we were able to talk through different aspects of pregnancy. A lot of the moms in the class are first-time moms, but I enjoyed doing it and being able to give my experiences. So I had a certain midwife for all of those classes. She was leading my group, and then she ended up being there for delivery, so it was great. The other midwives in the practice, they've actually hired 3 new midwives recently. I've only met 2 of them for very, very brief amounts of time, but I like all of them. So anyway, so it was a very easy pregnancy. Because I was older and gestational diabetes, they wanted me to take more precautions regarding extra testing. I didn't do any extra, what's it called? Any extra supplements or medicines. They never suggested I take baby aspirin, which I know they do for some women. None of those things, but they wanted me to do extra ultrasounds. So I did ultrasounds, I think at 32, maybe 28, 32, and 36 weeks. And then I did 1 a week at the end. They wanted to make sure, one of them, that baby was not getting too large, which he was always right around the 50th percentile. And actually, just a few days before he was born, they measured him at 7 pounds, 4 ounces. And so I wasn't worried about him being too big. We did have 2 times when they were doing the ultrasounds that they, right towards the end, the last, I think it was 36 and 37 weeks or something like that, that when we went in for the ultrasound, he didn't pass. So they want him to get points for how much he was moving and how well he was doing practice breathing and those types of things. And he didn't get all the points he needed. So they sent me for a non-stress test the first time. And then the second time he did pass, but it took a while. He had 30 minutes to do the test. The one he failed, he didn't get all the points in the 30 minutes. The one he didn't pass very well, he got all the points. He just didn't get them as fast as he had been getting them on the other ultrasounds. So anyway, we did an extra test. I think he was just having a sleepy time. We ended up eating some food and going to the hospital to get monitored, and everything was fine for those. So anyway, to labor and delivery. So if you've been following my channel, you've seen some of this stuff and maybe some of my other birth stories that I've done before. But this little guy was due on May 17th. Big sister that I mentioned, I called to tell we were pregnant, her and her husband were coming from Tennessee to be able to be here when baby was born. And I had a couple times beforehand that I was just like, oh, maybe baby's not gonna wait. I didn't have lots of preterm labor type stuff. I've had, with a couple other pregnancies, I've had a day or a couple hours where I was like, is this the real thing? Because I have a lot of Braxton Hicks contractions. So there were some other pregnancies where I thought a different day I was in labor and then I wasn't. But this pregnancy, I never had that. There were just times that it was like, oh, baby seems to be a little lower, that type of thing. wonder if he's going to wait till Virginia comes. Well, Virginia got here on Tuesday, the 14th, and I was due on the 17th, which was Friday. So they got here, no signs of labor. Wednesday, her husband worked on a project on my mom's house. Was it Wednesday? Maybe Thursday. He worked on a project on my mom's house. And then Friday, he was working on the project in my mom's house, getting fairly close to done. And we were in here doing a Bible lesson with the kids. And I got up to use the bathroom and thought my water broke. I was just having a little bit of leaking, trickles, I guess you would say. So I wasn't so sure. I was like, this seems a little strange. So I said, let's just wait a few minutes and we'll see what's going on. Well, as we waited for a little bit of time, there was definitely more leakage. So I was like, okay, that was my water. We are going to go in with the plan of what we were going to do for birth. So I, in the past, have had group B strep, which can affect baby with a respiratory infection when they're born. We actually had a baby 15 years ago that had this infection and was stillborn. And there was issues there, and I'm not going to go into all of that now, but because of that, we're very careful to get the antibiotics that you get during labor because of that. So I had already talked to my midwife. She had talked to the rest of the midwives in the clinic, and they had decided that if my water broke, which was usually the first sign of labor for me, but I wasn't having regular contractions, they would let me come in, get a dose of the penicillin that you need during labor, and then they'd let me come home. And I'd go back in later when I needed the next dose of penicillin or when my contractions picked up. So that morning, it was probably 10:30-ish. I thought my water might have broken. Around 11:30, because I said I wasn't sure if it was my water, I called the midwife's office to say, hey, I think my water broke, or I'm pretty sure my water broke. I'd like to come in and get the penicillin. Sorry, the FedEx truck just pulled in. I was trying to watch where kids were. I went in and got the penicillin. Like, they called me back. I waited for them. I had lunch and stuff while we were waiting. And so we went to the hospital about 1, I would say, to get maybe 12:30. By the time we got the antibiotic, it was 1. So we went in, met the nurse. She hooked me up with the IV, got an antibiotic, and it all worked out great. I was having contractions at this point, but they weren't anything. They were very spread apart. They weren't normal labor contractions. This is baby number 10. I knew that they weren't doing much. I mean, early labor contractions, but not actually getting baby out. So we got the antibiotic. We got to meet our nurses. I had a great nurse. I actually had 2 nurses that first time. I had Madeline, and then I had Maddie. And Maddie actually had heard about me, said that she heard I was a really good patient, which just a reassurance for people out there that don't do all the medical stuff. We choose not to get the eye ointment, and we choose not to do the hepatitis B shot. We choose not to do a lot of the different medical things. I choose to keep baby with me all the time, not send them out of the room. We do some of the testing that I think is important, and we decline some of the testing that we don't think is important. So I'm always kind of worried that they are going to think that I'm a not compliant patient because I'm not doing all the things that are regular protocol for the hospital. But that doesn't seem to be the case at all, because Maddie had heard that I was a great patient and she wanted me as her patient, and she was just great, and she let me do what I needed to do. So there wasn't really anything big that first time I went in, because I just knew I was going to get the penicillin and go home. But when I got there, they did find out that it was my water that broke. The midwife came and checked on me. We did not do any exams because at that point your water's broken. You don't want to do anything that's going to cause infection. But I had worn a pad over to the hospital, so they checked that with the little test strip, which immediately came up blue. They said, yes, it was your water. Here's the penicillin, or your amniotic sac. Here's your penicillin, and now you can go home. So they told me to come back at 5. So we came home for that afternoon. It was really nice because I got to spend some time with the kids. I got to spend some time resting too. My husband did a little exercise thing on me that you kind of shake. I would lay on my side and he'd kind of shake my hips and loosen everything up. This was taught to me by the midwife. And then you kind of hang your leg over the side of the bed and then you do an inversion thing. And it's just to help get baby in a better position. It really helped my hips. So Mark did that while we were home. We played outside. We had actually gotten some dry ice. The kids were playing with dry ice. If you saw the snarky video that Virginia and I did together, I actually was here and having some slight contractions during that. It was the time between getting that first dose of penicillin and going back to the hospital for more. So by the time we left for the hospital again, we had to leave at we left at 4:30 because my mom was giving us a ride and that's when she could take us. But I was supposed to be at the hospital by 5 to get my next dose of medicine. And by the time we left, I decided we should stay at the hospital because I just was feeling more contractions. They were definitely manageable, but more contractions. And when my body gets into active labor, it goes very fast. I didn't really want to make the decision to try to take our vehicle where I would be driving, drive over there and then drive home and have to get myself back there in the middle of, dinner time, prayer time, getting people pajamaed, getting people in bed. I just felt that would stress me out and would be something that could cause my body to stop labor. So I didn't do that. I have found through all of my labors, this being number 10, that I am very prone to that fight or flight response when I get stressed out during labor, and my contractions will actually just stop. I know people say if it's real labor, your contractions won't stop, but unless I'm close to the end, my contractions will stop. And it's the idea that if you were laboring and something dangerous happened and you needed to be able to get away, your body could stop labor so you could get away from that. My body's just very sensitive to that. And so we decided at that time of going back to the hospital that we were just going to stay. So we got back to the hospital, they got me in a room, and I got Maddie back, who was my nurse before. And I had found out from texting one of my other favorite nurses, one of the night nurses, that she was actually going to be on call that night. So I knew she was coming, and that was very exciting. And I knew my midwife was on call that day. So it was all great. So we got to the hospital. It took a while for them to get the next bag of medicine, which it shouldn't. The nurse was doing fine. It was the pharmacy. But they want you to have it every 4 hours. And we ended up waiting 5.5 hours before I got it because the pharmacy wasn't doing their job. Not that they didn't do their job. I don't know what happened on their end. I know my nurse was doing all she could to get it, and it didn't come to the room in time. So I don't know what happened on the pharmacy end, but it was on the pharmacy end that it happened. So I ended up getting that dose, and I was just having super manageable contractions. If you watch the video from Parts of Labor, I would just kind of rock during the contractions. I could feel them in my lower pelvis, but they weren't bad. There was pressure, but there wasn't I didn't feel pushy or anything. I just felt like I could totally handle those contractions all day long. That would be fine. And so during that time, we got some supper. Our hospital lets you eat if you're at least in my situation, I was allowed to eat. They didn't hook me up. When we first got to the hospital for both the first dose of penicillin and the second dose, they hooked me up for on the monitors for 20 minutes to see how baby was doing. But then after that, they ended up just using a Doppler every 30 minutes to just check on baby. And it wasn't really every 30 minutes, it was close to that, but they would just come in and check on baby during that time, but I didn't have to stay hooked up. And with the penicillin that I had to be hooked up to an IV for the time that the medicine went through, which was about half an hour, but then they took that off and I just kept the IV line in my arm. And so I wasn't hooked up to anything, so I could easily walk around the room and do whatever. So I wasn't feeling like I wanted to be walking a lot because it just seemed like this could take a while. And so I was just moving from different seated positions, and then I'd walk for a little while and then I'd go sit for a little bit. And Mark was feeling very useless because I was like, there's nothing for you to do. With other pregnancies, I've had really bad back labor. I need you to rub my back. Oh, I need you to do this. But I didn't really feel any of that. And I wasn't taking long periods of time to walk around. So sometimes he's been if you've seen different labor positions and stuff, sometimes he's been dance partner, you know, where you kind of drape your arms around him and just kind of lean and rock. But I wasn't even feeling the need to do that. And so I didn't want to wear him out when I wasn't really needing him. It actually was kind of a blessing because there was a lot of stuff going on that night in the labor and delivery department. And there was other people that needed the doctors and midwives that were there. And so I would have been taken care of course, had something happened, but I didn't need, like, I was able to just labor in my room. They would come check on me, but then they would leave. And I just had it was kind of like a home birth. They were just leaving me alone and I could do what I wanted. But then I also had a really great nurse and I liked my midwife. And so when they would come in, it was fun and we'd talk and we'd chat and it wasn't stressful to me. The only times that were stressful were whenever she would come in to do the Doppler, the nurse, my body would stop contracting. I told you the fight or flight response in me is strong. So I would stop contracting. And so they wanted to hear baby through contractions, how his heart rate was doing, but my body just wouldn't contract while he was there, while the nurse was there. And so she would just listen to him for a while through what would have been a contraction or a couple of contractions, and he was doing fine, but my body wasn't actually having a contraction. But the whole time he was doing fine, he was moving and all of that stuff. The only other stressful part of it, and it was because I've never had this happen before, is all day my heart rate was a little elevated. Not really sure why, but it wasn't like high. It was just a little higher than they wanted. But it came to be around 1, and I'll explain. I just was having a lot of contractions at this point. I'll explain the contractions in a minute. But around 1:30, I don't remember exactly when, they decided that it had been a long time and they wanted to do the monitors on my stomach again. So they put the monitors on. I was having contractions, which were painful at this point, and they were having a hard time hearing baby. Like, he was just very low and he kept kind of moving. So they were having a hard time keeping track of him. And my heart rate was high. So it was hard for them to differentiate between my heart rate and baby's heart rate. It kept grabbing mine instead of his. And so that was starting to stress me out because I have never had that happen before in labor. So I was just a little nervous, like, what is going on? Is this okay? And my nurse was great. She's like, okay, Sarah, I just need you to calm down. This is okay. We just need you to, like, we need to be able to hear the baby. And she was being as calming as she could. They weren't like super stressed about it. It was just something they needed to be able to make sure him and I were both doing okay. But I was really stressed about it. And so she was good there. At that time though, the timeline's a little fuzzy for me. If you've been in labor, you know that a long period of time can seem very short and a short period of time can seem very long, depending on where you are. Anyway, around 12:45 probably, I decided that I should go lay down. I wasn't really tired. The contractions were still very manageable, but this was now 12:45 at night or into the next morning. And I was just like, I don't know how long this is going to go on. I really feel like my body could do this for hours and I should lay down. So Mark got all tucked in on the couch. I went over and got tucked in on the bed. And I don't know, 15 minutes after laying there, I had a contraction that like made me sit up. I could not lay down through it anymore. I could feel it all in my back, which I hadn't been having any type of contraction in my back up to this point. And it was just intense. I knew that that was definitely, okay, we've hit active labor at this point. So this was just a few minutes after 1. So I got up. Mark actually fell asleep during this point, but I got up. Our labor rooms are really big. So he was like on the other end of the labor room and I didn't say anything because I didn't know how long this was going to last. So I got up and sat in the chair that was next to the bed and did like 2 contractions there. And I was like, okay, these are intense. I can't do this. In the middle of those, I think after that first contraction, I went and used the bathroom and I could definitely feel baby was low. I mean, we knew baby was descending at this point, like just in my stomach. He was probably 4 inches lower from where they first heard his heart rate earlier in the day when we did the Doppler and stuff to where he was when they did the last check. At this point, he had definitely gotten lower. So in all of this, they came in and they put the monitors on me and stuff like that. But I was like, these contractions are hard. You know, I definitely didn't feel like I could lay down during them. I wanted to move. And I never felt pushy. Like I just felt more pressure down there. And so I went and used the bathroom again. I came back and I was standing at the side of the bed. They had raised the bed up and I was just had my arms on the bed and I was just kind of moving my hips back and forth, standing at the side of the bed and feeling lots and lots of pressure. But again, I didn't actually feel pushy. I've had that intense, I need to push, the baby's right there feeling, but I didn't have that. So I got up on the bed because they wanted to see, well, I wanted to be on the bed because that's where I wanted to deliver. I've always delivered up until the last one flat on my back. I know that's not the best way to deliver a baby, but I deliver my baby in just a few pushes. The longest I've ever pushed was 20 minutes and that was my first. Since then, it's never been more than 5 minutes. So it's not hindering baby at any point. And I have, because of the Charcot-Marie tooth that I have a lack of balance, like I balance issues. And so I would not feel safe if I was like squatting or something like that. So that's where I prefer to be. So I got up on the bed and still not feeling pushy. But the midwife was like, Sarah, would you be okay if I checked you? And I went back and forth with her because I was like, I don't want you to check me because I'm afraid that I'm not as far along as you think I am. And I don't want to be, for you to tell me I'm an 8 and I still have to wait. A couple labors ago, she was my midwife. She's been my midwife the last couple deliveries. And a couple deliveries ago, I got stuck at 7 centimeters and stayed there for a little while. So that was in my head. I don't want to be stuck there. I don't want to push too early, but I don't, it was just all those things going through my head. And she was like, okay, Sarah, you know that you're you're getting close, you're further along. And I think that it would really help you if I checked you. So she wasn't like, she was doing this all very kindly. I did not feel pressured or anything. I just felt like I was going to feel bad if she checked me. At this point, I have not been checked at all. Like I've had no cervical checks the entire pregnancy, the entire delivery so far, nothing. So I said, okay, you can check me. So she put on a sterile glove because my water's broken and she checks me. And as she takes her hand out, she's like, oh, you're 10 centimeters, you can push. And I was like, really? I am? Okay. And so she took her glove off and I said, okay, so I can push on the next contraction. And she's like, yes, go ahead. And so I gave a little like grunty kind of push and baby started coming. And within a push and a half, he was out. The only reason it was a push and a half was because she was like, oh wait, you need to wait because she didn't have her gloves on. But really he just slid right out and he was perfect. They were able to put him directly onto my chest, which is what I wanted. At our hospital, Mark has been allowed to catch the babies and put them on my chest, but that was not something he chose to do this time. But they did. They put him right on my chest and they did nothing to the cord or the placenta at that point. They just left baby attached. They wanted to give me Pitocin because I've had multiple babies and there's risk of postpartum hemorrhage. And I already had told them that I was willing to do it if we saw a problem, but I didn't want to do it just preventatively. And they were okay with that. Like they were watching me closely, but they were okay with that. And I already had the IV drip and I had already been on liquids because of the group B strep and everything. So I was comfortable with that option. So we were just sitting and waiting. And it was like 8 minutes later, I said, oh, so he was born at 2:10 a.m. So I had that at 1 o'clock, I started having those hard contractions. He was born at 2:10 a.m. About 8 minutes later, I said to the midwife, I said, is my placenta possibly detached? Because I feel like I need to push. And she said, yes. So she said it was okay. And I pushed out the placenta and it was still attached at that point. They actually just put it in a bowl and he was still attached to the placenta while it was out. And they waited until the cord was totally white before they let Mark cut the cord. But the awesome thing was I did not want to take that Pitocin if I didn't need to. Last labor, I had gotten it right after baby was born because my placenta detached really, really quickly. like 2 minutes after. And so I had a gush of blood that we didn't realize was the placenta. And so I had said, yes, you can give it to me, because I could feel the gush of blood. This time they delivered the placenta, and there was no blood. Like the lowest number they can mark down, I think it's like 50 cc's or something. I don't know. My midwife was very impressed, and she was showing all the nurses going, I've never seen anyone write down this number before, and believed them, because people bleed when they have babies, and I actually didn't. And even after that, the nurse, they had the Pitocin in as an order all night, just in case I started bleeding later, because you can do that. And I never had any amazing amounts of blood that they had to do anything for, so I was able to avoid the Pitocin altogether. Hi baby. So yeah, it all went great. So he was born at 2:10. We got to have, I did almost a whole hour of just snuggling him. It's called the golden hour, where you try to nurse and just get to smell baby. He was very, very cheesy. He had vernix all over him, and he was just perfect. So he was born the day after his due date, and he, I snuggled him for that time, and then Mark snuggled him for a few minutes, and then we went and had him weighed and everything, because we were tired and we're ready to get back to the recovery room. We have, how our hospital works is you deliver in one room, and then they move you to another room for the rest of your stay. And so Mark held him for a few minutes, and then we did the scale and measuring and everything. So he weighed in at 7 pounds 6 ounces, which he had been 7'4" on the ultrasound 4 days before. So the ultrasound tech was very close with that. And yeah, he was just perfect. I got to have a great nurse. So I had Maddie for my day nurse every day I was there, and we had Becca as my night nurse every night we were there. And we were able to just have some really good discussions that I was able to just talk to them about God, and just tell them about our story of family and babies, and how God has just blessed us in so many ways with our children. I was able to be at the hospital for the time that I needed to be, but I was able to be left alone, which is really what I wanted this labor. We were able to, I delivered him at 2:10 on Saturday morning, and he had absolutely no signs of group B strep, and they let us go home after we went home Sunday, late morning, early afternoon, only because they would have been able to get us out earlier, but I wanted the family to be able to go to church that morning. And so I stayed at the hospital while they went to church, and then they came and picked me up. But it was nice to be able to go home so soon, because with other babies, they've kept me for the 48 hours after to watch for group B strep. So this time we got to come home a little earlier, which was great. And it was just amazing to be able to have the birth that I wanted. So many things went exactly how I'd been praying for them to go. And I know that even if they had not gone exactly as I had prayed for them to go, it still would have been God's will for what was going to happen. But we just felt God's hand in a lot of it. And it was just such a peaceful birth and so nice. So anyway, that's what happened. So that was 17 days ago. Virginia and her husband were able to be here they left yesterday. So for the first 16 days of his life, they were able to be here and get to meet him and everything. And Virginia is going to have her own little baby in July, which is very exciting. We're not going to be able to go down there for his birth, just circumstances, but we're hoping to be able to see him after he's a couple months old. But it was fun to be able to walk through that experience with Virginia. She wasn't there when I delivered, but we were able to just talk about it. We were able to talk about breastfeeding and newborn care and all of those things. It was just a neat experience. While she's actually pregnant and baby's going to be here in a couple weeks, she was able to just view it differently than before, when she's just watched a sibling be born. And so it's been a very sweet couple weeks, and we've been making some videos, but they've been in between times of resting and everything. I'm very big that mom should rest after she has a baby. So I've been spending my time in bed or in the recliner, and other people have been taking on work. We've also gotten work done around here, because while Wayland was here, he's a carpenter, so he did some projects for us. We've been getting other stuff done around the house, but I've been just taking time to rest and bond with baby and nurse and all of those things. So if you have any questions about my labor and delivery story, pregnancy of this baby, or anything else, you can leave it in the comments below and I'll try to answer. But just wanted to let you guys know that birth went well, and hope that that was an encouragement to some of you. Thank you for joining us on Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God, and we'll see you guys next time.